Micky Van De Ven and James Maddison have already established themselves as key players in this new look Ange Postecoglu Tottenham team. Unfortunately, after the season opening 4-1 defeat against Chelsea that saw both Romero and Udogie see red, Spurs fans were struck with their worst nightmare as both Maddison and Van De Ven have picked up long-term injuries that is most likely going to keep them out until January. So, looking at this graph from this current Premier League campaign, this helps us identify why James Maddison is such a key player for Tottenham and why his loss is actually so huge for them. So in this graphic we can see that James Maddison has been compared to both Dominic Szoboszlai from Liverpool and Bruno Fernandes from Man United. These two are both two creative midfielders in two of the top clubs in the country, but they're both very different and they both specialise in two different aspects of creativity. So the stats that we're going to focus on and highlight here really sort of differentiate what I mean by Bruno Fernandes and Szoboszlai being two very creative players, but very different in how they create chances for their teams. So as shown by the stats here, we can see that Szoboszlai is more of a ball-carrying creator, and he'll look to do things like beat people on the dribble and carry the ball forward to create opportunities, both for himself, that we've seen a lot this season, and for his teammates. Whereas Bruno Fernandes is a player who doesn't like to carry the ball as much. He'll tend to look for more, as we can see by the stats highlighted, key passes, progressive passes, and he'll like to try to play more forward passes. And in turn, as we can see in the stats, he's got lower forward pass percentages, but he tends to play riskier balls, trying to look for that sort of last killer ball to create the chances. Hence, why he's one of the best assisters statistically in the top 5 leagues in Europe. So you might be wondering, what does looking at Bruno Fernandes and Dominic Szoboszlai's stats have anything to do with why James Maddison is such a huge loss for Tottenham? Well, if we now begin to look at Maddison's stats, we can see that he's very high in progressive carries, the highest out of the three. He's also the second highest in key passes, and he's also the second highest in progressive passes. The reason he's such a huge loss for Tottenham is the fact that, with Bruno Fernandes, we're looking at a player who creates through passing, with Szoboszlai, a player who creates primarily through ball carrying. But James Maddison for Tottenham, he's the main creator through ball carrying and through passing. So when you take him out of that Tottenham team, you're now losing two creative elements. This then means players like Pedro Porro in terms of his passing ability, and then Dejan Kulusevski for Tottenham in terms of his progressive carrying and ball carrying ability, need to now step up to sort of fill the void while Maddison is gone. So expect to see, if Tottenham are going to continue to do well like they've been doing this season, Pedro Porro and Dejan Kulusevski are going to have to be playing very, very well to attempt to fill this void. As they've both been playing well this season, but they're now going to have to step up massively. And if they can do that, that might lessen the impact of losing a player like James Maddison. Micky Van De Ven has also had an incredible start to his Tottenham Hotspur career, and him being out with this injury until the new year is a massive blow for Tottenham. His recovery speed is one of the best of any centre-backs in the world, and it works perfectly in Ange's system, allowing Spurs to play an extremely high line and allow excess space in behind, as they can rely on Van De Ven to catch even the fastest of forwards in the Premier League. He's also really surprised me with how elite his ball carrying ability has been. We can see it supported by looking at his progressive carries and successful take-ons, whilst he is also providing a very capable progressive passer of the ball, and this pairs very well with Romero's elite passing ability. Now, with the injuries that Spurs have suffered this season, it's clear to see that the depth of the squad is not really up to the standard that Ange Postecoglu would want, and he stated that in many press conferences that we need to strengthen the team a lot more. We also need to take into account the fact that even though Spurs have suffered so many long-term injuries already, they're going to lose 3 more important players in this upcoming January window, as both Sarr and Basuma are going to be off from the Africa Cup of Nations with their respective countries, and Son is also going to be at the Asia Cup. So that's 3 more important first-team players that Ange Postecoglu is going to lose. So bearing all this in mind, this upcoming January transfer window can be a really, really important point in Spurs' season this year. The 3 positions that really need prioritising are, obviously, centre-back is the main priority, and in my opinion, they obviously need one important first-team centre-back, but if they can ship someone like Eric Dyer out, which they need to, then 2 would be the ideal scenario. Next on the agenda for Ange should really be another central midfielder. Whether this be a 6 or an 8 is obviously up to Ange and how he sort of wants to play the system, but either or is really something that Spurs need to look to bring in this transfer window as well. And I think the final position Spurs need to really focus on is a left winger, to be honest. And I think in this squad, Spurs really lack like a 1v1 specialist and someone who's unbelievably good at dribbling the ball and beating his man either left or right. And a player who I thought Spurs should have gone for in the summer was Jeremy Doku, who's obviously gone to Man City, and he's sort of the prototype in my mind of what is needed in this Ange Postecoglu system. Someone who's able to just beat his man right or left, has got blistering pace and unbelievable dribbling. And obviously at City, he's shown how good he is. So a left winger is also something I'd look to target in this January transfer window. One centre-back who has been linked to Tottenham and a move in the January window is Jean-Claire Todibo, who is a Nice and French international. However, Spurs have also been linked with Radu Dragushin, who is a Romanian centre-back who plays for Genoa. Dragushin looks to be available for around 25 million euros, and he'll be a very important player for Spurs, as Ange Postecoglu has promised him regular first-team football, as obviously he'll be seen as an understudy to Van De Ven and Romero, but with the injuries and suspensions that Spurs have had this season, he'll see a lot of first-team football. Over his career in the Serie B and Serie A, Dragushin has proven to be an elite aerial threat both offensively and defensively. Only one player in Serie A this season has won more aerial duels than him, and that player is the 6'6" striker Milan Djuric of Hellas Verona. Dragushin is also a competent passer, and he has room to grow and develop into a really good ball-playing defender. It'll be interesting to see how he transitions from playing a deep low block 5, like they've been doing in Genoa this season, to this high back 4 Ange Postecoglu line. So that'll be an interesting dynamic to see how he fits into that sort of role. Through this window, the only real sort of solid central midfielder links to Spurs have had are to Conor Gallagher, but I can only see this deal actually happen if an important bid of probably 30 to 40 million came in for Højbjerg. I think Spurs would be open to selling him, and then that would potentially open the door for Gallagher. But from the sources and the sort of news that I've read, Gallagher seems to be pretty happy at Chelsea and wants to sort of fight for his place, and he obviously is the captain. So this one, in my opinion, is pretty unlikely to happen in January. Potentially one to look for or look out for in the summer. However, one player who looks like he will be joining Tottenham in the January transfer window, a surprise to many, is Timo Werner from RB Leipzig. And he looks like to be joining on a loan with an option to buy, I think for around 16 to 17 million. Although he's more of a striker than a left winger, he does provide the option to play both as a striker up front and off the left, which he's done for both Chelsea and Leipzig. I think Werner can work really well for Ange's system, as he's a relentless presser, and he'd provide also that much needed burst of pace that we can sometimes sort of lack with a player like Richarlison up front. But I think one thing he needs to look to improve in his game is at Chelsea, he did tend to get caught offside a lot. So if he can sort of master the timing of his runs in behind, then he could be really lethal in that Tottenham front 3, even on the left or as a striker. Ange has also spoken about how he believes that the talent at the top level of football is very negligible between the top level and the level below it. So he obviously looks for players who have really good character, who are good dressing room sort of figures. They work hard. They're, I think, conscientious. He looked at as well. So when you get in a player like Werner, you're getting someone who works very hard. He put himself about at Chelsea a lot, and he was really determined. Although he got a lot of stick and obviously was almost sort of hounded out, he'll be a very good signing in terms of his sort of dressing room atmosphere. But if any manager is able to get the best out of a sort of a player who's sort of been struggling in recent years like Werner, it's Ange Postecoglu. And so far with his signings, his tactics, and sort of everything he's done in the last 6 months and the start of his Tottenham Hotspur tenure, he's got everything nailed on. So there's no reason to not back him in terms of who he's looking for in the January transfer window. And Daniel Levy needs to take notice and make sure he gets in who Ange wants. Because at the moment, it looks like there's no stopping Big Ange.